All right, careers in code. We're going to talk briefly about a tip calculator today. Hopefully, we can execute this in the next hour. It's 3:30 on a Sunday. You guys just attended a live coding session with me about the Syracuse.com project. You saw me go through Sass, through HTML, CSS, responsive. Got pretty far into it. Well, we're going to take a break and we're going to switch gears into executing a design that roughly looks like this, if this pops up correctly. A little tip calculator, basic design, a header, a main content, and some inputs and some outputs. Outputting the total tip, outputting the total bill. The whole idea behind this is to capture 2 bits of input and calculate 2 bits of output. Um, and this is how you really learn the beauty of JavaScript and a little bit of HTML and CSS along the way. I've given you styles for this, but it's Roboto Slab, Google Fonts, Georgia Italic, nothing fancy. And I've given us some colors to work with, basic green, black, gray, light gray, and white. Nothing too bad, but this last page is about how are we going to structure our JavaScript. Okay, this is a little clue about almost from top to bottom how the JavaScript file is going to look. We're going to have some code that listens for some form changes. We're going to capture some user inputs for the total bill. We're going to capture some user input for the total tip. We're going to have JavaScript do some math, and then it's going to output the tip and output the total bill. And some of you might laugh at a project like this because, oh, it's simple, or it's so piddly compared to all the big projects out there. And I say, don't laugh at these. If you can't do something like this, you have no business doing anything larger than this. You don't have business working for a company, for an agency, doing JavaScript work, doing full stack, back end or front end stuff without you understanding how to do simple little things. And I personally hate going to classes or watching videos online where they talk about things on how to do things in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but they don't actually give it real context. This is an example of real context. It has a purpose. You're going to design something that actually serves a real purpose of calculating the bill. This is a real world example. It's not a fake hypothetical project that there's no what ifs. No, this is something that you could literally publish and put out there. Granted, don't do that because there is 1 million tip calculators out there, and they're all doing something special. So don't enter that fray. I'll be on Slack on my phone off to the side, but let me know if you guys have any questions on Slack about the tip calculator as I build this from scratch. We're going to do the HTML and the CSS/Sass first. That'll probably take a half hour or less. And then we'll switch gears and work on the JavaScript for like a half hour to 45 minutes. Hopefully we'll be done by 4:30, 1 hour from now. Do you guys hear me okay? On Slack, give me a thumbs up. Do you hear me? Do you see my screen? Things okay? I'm going to make sure I'm controlling my screen properly, all that fun stuff. Not showing windows upon windows. We got Kate, we have Karen, thumbs up, thumbs up. Hit me with some love. Oh, we got some Kelly, thumbs up. Kelly, 2 thumbs? Really, that's obnoxious. You need to calm down that font size on the thumbs up. That's just crazy. I'm kidding. Okay. First step, what do I do? Well, we're going to create a project folder, of course. A couple ways of creating a project folder. I don't know, the quickest way for me is to go into careers and code, I don't know, module 2, and create a folder called tip calculator. It's a big word, calculator. Watch out. Oh my God, Kelly, calm down. I'm excited to learn, Jeff. Jeez. My God. If anyone's tuning into Slack, this girl needs to. Where's the penalty box? You need to do 2 minutes in the penalty box. Anyways, dragging the tip calculator into the folder. And let's start it up. Let's get right into the terminal. Force ourselves to always create things with a terminal. We're not gonna get super elaborate with this project because it's like a one-off project, but We're going to touch. Let me make this bigger so we can all see this. Oh my god, super big. Okay. Touch what? Touch index.html. Perfect. Let's make a directory for the CSS, make a directory for the JavaScript. We're going to use that for this project. And no images for this. Not that I know of. Yeah, no images. We're going to change directory, go into the CSS folder, and touch and make style.sass. While I'm here in the CSS folder, I'll make a directory for base. I'll make a directory for components for the form. Make a directory for, nope, not make directory. I think we're done with directories, base and components. There's barely a header to this, and there's no footer to this, and there's a main element, so we're not going to go overkill with this. Karen on Slack, you were saying either I'm drunk or your screen is blurry. Uh-oh. I refresh my screen now. All good now. Yes. Okay. We're not going to get super elaborate with this, so I'm not going to make a directory. I am going to change directory, go into base, and touch. Let's make normalize. Oh, touch underscore normalize.sass. Touch variables.sass, touch foundation.sass. And is there a mixin to this? We're not making it responsive, so right now I'm not going to make a mixins partial file. Okay, cd // get out of there. And where am I? pwd, I'm in the CSS folder. I'm going to change directory and go into components. And touch and make underscore form singular, yeah, .scss. Perfect. Just getting the base things going. Like I said last time in the video for Syracuse.com, don't get too crazy with the setup. Just get the things that you need to do and force yourself to use the folder structure inside your CSS directory so that as you scale up and get more complex, you won't have the growing pains of reorganizing files. I'm going to open up style.css and pretend that those files are ready to go, but we're going to get into an import, the table of contents, if you will. Load in base normalize. Load in base / variables. Load in base / foundation. And import one more thing, and that's going to be components / form. Anytime I switch to a new folder, I like to do a new import because it creates chapter markers for me in this table of contents, if you will. It's like imports almost like a little parent, and then base normalizes a child, base variables, base foundation. It's like little sub-chapters of the main chapter marker. You don't have to do that. You could if you really want to. Just slam it all together. And if you can tell by my voice, when you slam it all together, sometimes it decreases the amount of legibility in your documents. Now, all the imports are just kind of like blurry together. But by having single imports like this, I think the readability, the organization is perfect for you, for teammates, for anyone looking at your code. Normalize, let's go get normalize going. Open it up, open up a new tab, normalize. You can probably get this from a previous project. I don't. I select all from the browser and I paste in. Where did I get all that stuff? Well, I Google search normalize, hit download, select all, copy, paste over. We've done this 1,000 times. Close. Variables. Variables is where we're going to put in the colors. And there was a green. There was a, well, we're not going to do black, but there was dark gray. Yep. Black we can type ourselves. White we can type ourselves, but a gray and a light gray. So gray and a light gray. I'm just quickly typing these out. My camel case light gray. And then go grab the values from the PDF. So the green 00 F17. Gray is A4s. And light gray is E5s. Beautiful. Perfect. Primary font is Roboto, but I keep forgetting to show Google Fonts. I'll get to that eventually. And then secondary font is going to be Georgia. But really it's Roboto Slab and Georgia. But for right now, let's just stay basic. Questions so far? Let me know on Slack if there's anything. But this makes sense so far. We normalize done. We got variables done. Here comes foundation. Foundation is where I light it up, the body background color. Yellow for right now. And you should be used to this by now. Declare your default font size so that you can use rems throughout your document. Let's go to index.html. If I hit save and refresh and bring it up, open in the browser, you're not going to see anything because this has 0 things inside this document. So VS Code, exclamation point, tab, this is index.html, fill it up. Title can be switched to tip calculator and link to something, link to css/style.css. Boom. Now if I open this up in the browser, I see nothing because, I hope you know the because. Anyone? It's because Sass is turned off right now. Sass isn't on. Just because you have Sass files doesn't mean the browser or Sass wakes up and compiles things itself. So if you've never done this yet, oh my God, I want to go to View, Terminal, and ignore this, ignore this. Yes, you can always work with a single terminal, but you can always go to this icon and click it, and you get a double terminal. What if you don't want a double terminal and you want to go back to a single? You just right-click or control-click and hit kill this terminal, and you go back to single. So anyways, I often open up a double terminal so that one uses Sass. So Sass watch style. Oh, now hold on, timeout. Before I do this, here's always the first step. PWD, where the hell are you? Ooh, I'm in components in the CSS in tip calculator. Yeah, that's change directory .. get out PWD. Yeah, now I'm in CSS. Perfect. Now I can do my Sass watch style.scss : style.css. Now we're writing beautiful, and if I come back and refresh, boom, it's working. I'm gonna just make that small off to the side so we can see things. Are we good? Does that make sense? This is probably now the 7th, 8th, maybe even 9th time you've seen that entire process from scratch. Give me a thumbs up if you're good to go to the actual HTML construction. We're going to get into the header, the main, and the form inside it, and all the little bits and buttons. No one wants to give me a thumbs up on Slack. Oh my God. Great. Kate's coming in for the win. Boom. Thank you. At least one person loves me. Gosh. No, Karen. No, Karen, stop. No, take it back. Take it back. Delete it. You're too late. Kate got the victory. Okay, we're coming back. No, deck here. You can't even say all good. It's too late. Take it back. In the body, we have, what do we got? We have, go all the way back. Doing dishes, deck here. What the? Who can't Slack? Are you? You're a multitasker over there. Anyways, this green area is your header. The gray area, and all the way down, even down to this total bill, is going to be main content, but we have two little color divs, a light gray and a white div. For right now, we're just going to make it all light gray. But by saying that to myself, I have a header with an H1 inside it called tip calculator. Doing dishes back here, I'm impressed. Then we have a main element, and for right now, main content goes here. Doc here, want to come over to my house, do some dishes? Maybe we'll come over to Karen's house, do some dishes. You can do some dishes if you want everywhere. You gotta share your dish duties. Oh, Kelly's back, emerging from the penalty box. Nicely played, Kelly. Save, refresh. What's gonna happen? Nothing. Now, right now, what's bothering me is, the margin on top of this, margin on the bottom. The fact that this H1 is big and bold tells me I don't have control over my font. So here comes my MIDI reset. H1, H2 in the foundation, by the way. H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. P, UL, LI, margin 0, padding 0, and a new one for you, font colon inherit. It takes all the font properties and flushes out all of them so that you have now complete custom control over your fonts. Look, it even eliminates font weight, font size. It just flushes it out. Inherit means release what you have and start inheriting from parents. And the parents of these H1s and H2s is the body or the HTML elements. And the only thing that's been declared so far is font size 16px. Save. Boom. Good. Now, I'm just going to declare header right here. I would usually make a header partial. Jeff, don't get lazy. Make the header partial. Oh my God. We need to make a new. Yeah, see, I was about to be lazy for like 2 seconds. I'm going to pwd. Where am I in this terminal? Components. I'm going to change directory / get out, and I am going to make a directory called regions. And I'm going to change directory and go into regions and make it partial called header sass. Didn't you hear me like 20 seconds ago? I was about to be like, well, let's take a shortcut. Let's not take the extra 5 seconds. And I just slapped myself on the wrist and said, Jeff, take the extra 5 seconds and be organized. You'll thank yourself later. And it's absolutely true. Now I'm going to go into regions and header. And now I can talk about header. Open and closing curly brace. Header, background color, cache sign green from the variables. I'm going to add padding on all 4 sides, 1 rem. Save, refresh, and no green because I haven't imported the header sass file. Damn it all! Gotta import my header file. What the hell? Oh, table of contents. Boom. Components. Here it comes. An import. Import. I'll stop singing. I apologize. Region / header semicolon. Refresh. Boom. There she is. Header sass. I'm going to make it color white. Oh, actually, I can talk about the H1 right away. Hey, H1, you are font family, primary font, Arial, basically. Font size, until I know otherwise, 2 rems. Your color white. You are font weight bold. Bada bing, bada boom. Karen, you have a question. It doesn't matter what size you pick for the font, does it? I made mine 18 since it was the smallest one you requested. True. Well, in my foundation, I'm saying font size 16. Well, I guess you could set it to font size 18 and then use 1 rem in places or 1.5 rems in other places. If you do the math, that will work. I always start with 16 and I just force myself to do a little extra math. Save, refresh. What does this even look like? Boom. Perfect. I might blow up header a little bit because in the PDF, there's a little bit more space above the H1. than there is on the bottom of the H1. So header, you're going to have 3 rems on top, 1 rem on the right, 1 rem on the bottom, and 1 rem on the left. 4 values. This is top. The first one is top. Oh my God, stop highlighting. Top, right, bottom, left, clockwise. Save, refresh, boom. Also, hey, text align. I want you to center all the things inside header. Granted, it's one thing inside the header. Beautiful. Questions so far? I think we're good. Here comes the main content. Main content. Oh, main, I'm just going to put it here inside foundation. I guess I could make it a region, but we're not going to get super fancy with main because we're going to dive into the interior form right away. So background color, though, is going to be light gray. Light gray, ooh, I'm getting a little error message, doesn't know what light gray is. It's light gray with a capital G. And for right now, padding 1 rem. Save, refresh, blow it up a little bit. Perfect. The form stuff is going to really take place inside the form SAS file, the component/form file. But we haven't done anything form related. Any questions so far? Pretty good? Feeling good? Feeling like you actually know what HTML and CSS is and SAS? You're flying, you're flowing, code's flowing through your veins right now? Doc here is getting, what is it, dishpan hands right now while trying to think about code. No questions. Okay, let's get into it. Let's get into the main section. First of all, let me remind myself, what does the main content look like? It gets right into the form. How much was your bill? What percentage? Total tip, total bill. Deck here has a question. When you make the form part, can you give us an overview of the form? Yeah, I think I'll do that right now. All right, so when you use a form, you need to use the form elements. Now, when I just type out form, and then I hit tab, boom, and we're going to leave action blank for right now. I'm going to bring the closing form down, and this is going to be a wrapper around all the form pieces. This now tells the browser that a form is beginning, and on this line 17 for me, it's saying the form is complete. And everything inside here is all form related. This form is going to have an ID though, and I'm going to call this calculator. That's both for styling purposes and it's for JavaScript, mainly JavaScript. Because this represents a unique form on this page. It only exists once, and typically your forms should only exist once on your page. If you want a second form or a third form on the same page, you got to use different IDs for all that. Inside a form usually goes, well, we're going to use a label element. It says label. If I just type out the word label and I hit tab, labels help label input fields. It's really for screen readers, but you can also use it as a visual thing for your default user. And this for is going to be for a value, or sorry, an input field called bill. You're going to see where this for comes into play in about 2 seconds. Past the label, I'm going to make an input field. I'm going to type in input and hit tab. And it's not going to be a text type. It's going to be a number type. Okay, it's only going to allow numbers to be typed into this input field. You'll see why. The name of this input field is for the bill. Now, if you ever get into submitting this into a database, the name identifies the name of this field so that when you hand the values over into a database, it will carry this name, and eventually it will carry a value with it. We'll get to that in 1 second. And I will put a class called, I don't know. Well, not ready for styling just yet. Let's just see what happens when I hit save. and refresh. And what's going on? Oh, I have no label here. The label, yeah, it says for bill, but it's also going to say how much was your bill. That's going to be inside the label. How much was your bill? Question mark. So when you look at this right now, a label is no different than a headline or a paragraph. But for a screen reader, it actually says, you know what? For a person with accessibility, for a screen reader, the input field identifies that this label is for this input field. It corresponds to it. It helps create a deeper connection. And that's important because as a screen reader kind of pronounces the entire page to the viewer with a reading disability, it makes those types of connections. It needs those type of relationships. Now notice labels are display inline block by default. Look at it, this doesn't take up a block space. If it took up a block space, it would go all the way to the right side and push the input field down to the next line. So we are going to get into form, and we're going to tell those labels, you need to blow yourself up to be 100% of the available space. In my form stats, I'm going to start talking to the calculator. Hashtag calculator, it's the ID called calculator. Hey calculator, I notice you have some labels inside you, one label so far. Right now, by default, it's display inline block. You know what? I want to take the labels and make them 100% of the available space. Save, refresh, boom. You don't see it, but this label line goes all the way across that line. Watch what happens when I turn on silly background color of lime green for every label. Save, refresh. Look at that lime green go all the way across 100%. If I take away display block, // see the green only goes the width of the interior content, and then the input field sneaks up right next to it. So by default, labels are display inline block until you declare otherwise, like display block. Boom. I'm going to leave it lime green for the time being, but I guess it also could say font family, secondary font, my Georgia, if you will. Font size, what was the font size in the PDF? Georgia Italic 18, so I'm going to do like 1.1 rem. I can't do the math, but maybe it is 18. I think that's good. Oh, italic. Font style, italic. I don't often do all these little design bits right away. I try to do them later on. And then margin bottom, half a rem, just to push off so that the label is not right up against the input field. Perfect. Good so far. The input. Ooh, so if I go back to my PDF, I have a little cash sign. I have a cash sign on the outside of this input field. How do I do that? How would you do that? And more importantly, think about it. There's two children. There's an input field, and then there's a cash sign. Like right here, I'm just going to put a cash sign in. Cash sign and input, they really need to share the space. Let's see what happens when I hit save and refresh. Oh, well, damn it. It kind of just puts it up there automatically. I was expecting to do display flex and give this some properties. Right now I can't really stylize it, so I'm going to put a span around this. I'm going to call this span, I'm going to call this span what? I'm going to call this prefix. I'm going to put a little cash sign in prefix. I'm putting span class prefix around the cash sign because I can stylize prefix. I can give it some properties. Period prefix. I don't know. What do we got? Font family, primary font. It was a Roboto slab. Font size for right now, I don't know, 1.5 rem. Color colon variable gray. Save, refresh. getting bigger, cool. Maybe font weight bold. And margin right, have that cache sign, push off a little bit, margin right, half a rem, just so that input field doesn't really, crowd up the space a little bit. The input field, however, needs to be stylized, needs to be, if I look at this closely, there's padding pushing away from the eventual value that goes in the middle. There's a border that goes around. So for right now, until I know otherwise, I'm just going to stylize all inputs. But yeah, let's see what happens. This is not the greatest thing to do. But here comes background color white, padding 1 rem, color black. That's the color of the typeface inside. Save, refresh. We have border 1px solid variable gray to wrap on all 4 sides. And more importantly, I want this input field to take up 100% of the available space. Not be some little itty bitty input field. I wanted to make it mobile friendly so that it just takes up everything else. My first instinct is to say width 100%. Input be 100% of the available space. Oh no! And we get some scrolly action, some right to left, and it just kicked down to the next available line. Not great. Not great at all. How are we going to get around this? Couple ways, I don't know. Couple ways of doing this. To keep it consistent with what you've been doing with Syracuse.com and Best Buy and JetBlue, little projects, I think the best way is to always have display flex applied to your row. Anytime you want a row, just bring in display flex. I think that's the easiest, most straightforward. There might be some other ways, but I'm going to wrap a little div around the prefix and the input, and we're going to call this input-row. Input row is going to have the prefix and the input field inside it. Input row. Input row has a span and the input inside it. Think about it before I flip over. I'm going to take input row, apply display flex, and it should take the 2 children, the span and the input, and make them display side by side. It should, in theory. I think it will. Hey, input row, display flex. Without doing anything magical, will this work? See, refresh, boom. How about center the children? Vertically center the children. What was that? That was, I think, align items, center. Like I said in my previous video, I always have to look these up. Boom. Yeah, it moves a little cache sign to the center. It centers it based on the tallest child in this row. So the input field is the tallest child. This input field is also going to have font family. Font family, primary font. It's going to be Arial for right now. Oh, I got to type in numbers. Okay. How about font size 1 rem, font weight bold. Type in numbers. There we go. Look at that. I was trying to type in letters and it wasn't working. It wasn't working because it's input type equals number. It's going to automatically block you from typing in any letters. It's a nice data validation little thing that you can do in HTML. It's kind of like when you see input type equals password. It'll hide the characters. There's all sorts of little properties you can put in here. I'm going to turn off the green on the lime green for the label. Hey, label, text align center. I don't want you off to the left. I want you in the center. You know what? I think everything inside this entire calculator is centered. So damn it, as a parent property inside calculator, everything is going to be text align center. Save, refresh, boom. So all my feature labels, all my inputs, my radios, whatever else is going to go in here will automatically be centered. This saves a little bit of typing and coding later on. Questions so far? The next thing, going down the hill. What percentage do you want to tip? Total bill. It's almost going to be the same thing. I'm going to take this this label and input row, copy, and now hold on, timeout. Now before I do this, we'll look at this preview, and what is this? I have border dash bottom black going all the way across. Now I apologize. I noticed this the other day. My border dash bottom didn't go all the way to the end. My design tool, my design software, I just wasn't paying attention. But pretend the black border goes all the way across the bottom. But to my point, every time a little group ends, a label and input, label, input, there's a border dash bottom, except the last one. So how would we do that? Couple ways. Well, before I answer that, Kate, how do you know when to use text align versus aligning items? Okay, so excellent question. Text align is left to right centering. Text align moves all interior content to the center, like the H1, the label, and then some of these other H tags. You can use display flex and do, there's some kind of left to right centering. That'll work. But text align kind of gets the job done. Align items is for vertical centering. And it was important to vertical center the cache sign next to the input field. But so far for all these other things, it's not going to be important to vertically center anything because they're just naturally going to be vertically centered. We might do something with the buttons down below, but we'll get to that. Other questions? All right, so back to my border dash bottom. If I see border dash bottom after almost every group, that tells me probably I should have a little div around the label and the input row. And I'm going to call it input-group. Input-group. It's a div class, and it's going to contain the label and a little row on the inside, if there is a row that's needed. And label these divs. Okay, this is my input group end, and this is my input row end. This tells me what these are closing, because sometimes these get out of hand a little bit. Every time an input group ends, I'm going to lay down a border dash bottom. Input-group in my form SAS, input-group, border dash bottom, 1px solid black. Input group, border dash bottom, 1px solid black. The black border goes right up against the edge of the input field. Now, I don't want that. I want a little padding. So we're going to do padding top 1 rem and padding bottom 1 rem. Save, refresh. Ooh, there we go. That pushes down, and it will eventually push. It will take care of my next input group once I reuse that input group class. So anytime you want to push a border away from the edge of a group or a parent, often use, padding. Watch what happens when I do margin bottom. I demonstrated this in class. You tell me what's the difference between margin and padding. Margin dash bottom pushed away the next item, but it didn't extend the boundaries of what the whole the input group takes up. Padding dash bottom will extend the boundaries and then lay down the border at the very end. Whoa, coming back. All right. Any questions? Karen, you might have a question. No JavaScript yet. You know, we're not getting fancy. We're just throwing in some styles. Karen's, that's much way easier than the way I did it. There's a couple of ways of doing borders, by the way. You can do HR element, horizontal rule element, but it's very hard to stylize. So I often, whenever I'm done with a group or a little article element sometimes, if I do want a division between them, then I'll lay down border dash bottom. All right, coming back. Input group. I'm going to use you again. Input hyphen group tab. Boom. Label it. I'm just going to copy this label from above and paste it down below. And this is going to have a label as well. I'm going to type out label tab. This is for tip. And how much do you want to tip? Now, I should say what percentage. What percentage do you want to tip at? Question mark. Now it's for a field that doesn't exist yet. And that field is going to be a little different. Now, when I was coding this myself, when I designed it, I made fancy buttons. And we can do fancy buttons. But I think in order to learn HTML and CSS, and more importantly JavaScript, I think it would be better for you to use radio buttons. And radio buttons are a very basic HTML element. Let me just open up a new tab and Google search HTML radio buttons. And the first little thing right here on W3 Schools. Input, yes, it's an input element. The type is different. It's a radio. Now the name, you can see name, gender, gender, gender. When you have a form, these are 3 options that relate to gender. When you send the results into a database, you're going to send the name once and then whatever the value is. So male, female, and other all pertain to the same input field, basically the same item that you're trying to give a value to. So input type, gender, value equals male, and then plain old HTML text after it, line break, and then the next radio button. And this got me the first time I got into radio buttons. I always thought the text after a radio button was like part of the element, and no. This input field, all that makes is a dot for you to click on. You basically make 3 dots with plain text after them. If you hit try it yourself, you can see over here that input type equals radio. Sorry. That's what that element makes. It's just this. This is plain text. You can call this bananas and apples and oranges, but what you really want to do is whatever you have it as the value, you want to match the value to the text that you put after it. So often what I do just to get started is I might just even copy this. No, let's not copy this. Let's just type this ourselves. It's kind of nice to do it yourself. Input. Now, as I type out the word input, VS Code is suggesting types of inputs to me. And if you hit down a few times, you're going to get down to the radio button. Input radio. You can hit tab. Woo, look at that. It built me type radio, name equals something, ID equals something. We're not going to use the ID right now until I know otherwise. But the name will be tip. And the value will be 0.01. Why is that? Because I'm going to type out 10% after that. Value equals basically 0.1. What we're going to do is once we connect JavaScript to this value is what we're going to use when we crunch the numbers. We're not going to take the string 10 percentage sign. We're not going to take that. We're actually going to take a little mathematical number, an integer. And I'm going to do this again, input, and scroll down to the radio, tab, name equals, yes, tip, no ID, but a value of 0.15. The 0 is optional, by the way. So I'll take that away. With 15% after it with a break. And you know what? The last one, we're just going to copy and paste one of these. Oops, wrong copy paste. Copy, paste, no break at the end of that. And it's going to be 20%, 20 value, 0.2. They're all name equals tip because in JavaScript, we're going to have JavaScript look for the input called tip and grab the value of the checkboxed one. Save, refresh. We're not doing JavaScript right now, but we will. Refresh. And whoa, look at all this. It really spreads them out. Why are they so spread out? What did I do? Input group. Oh, is input group betraying us? No, border dash bottom. No input row. Why are you so spread out, buttons? I didn't have this problem earlier. I'm going to inspect element. Padding. Oh, ooh, yeah. This is what's getting me in trouble. I knew that was going to get me in trouble. Okay. These radio buttons are input elements. They're input elements. They're no different than the input element that I had before upstairs. That input element I wanted width 100%. But now these little radios are becoming width 100%. You can see that. Forcing the text to go down below. Ooh. So to get around that, we are going to use type selectors. Watch this. Right down here in SAS, form SAS, all these styles about this input are for square brackets, type equals text. See what happens. I think that's correct. Save, refresh. No. Oh, type equals in quotes. Ugh, I always forget the quotes. Type equals in quotes text. Save, refresh. Did not work correctly. Hold on for 1 second. Oh, it's not type. It's not type equals text, Jeff. It's type equals number. Oh my God, I'm an idiot sometimes. Don't chime in on that. Yes, I am an idiot sometimes. Boom, perfect. Look how that just affects my number field, my input that has the type attribute with number as its value. That leaves all the other inputs alone, which is good. And now 10, 15, 20% are left alone. Beautiful. Perfect. A few more things, then we'll get into JavaScript. The last two items are rather straightforward and simple. There's two more input groups. Input hyphen group tab. There's going to be a label. The label is for the total tip. And I'm going to say total tip. But inside here is going to be just a regular H2 element. You'll see why. And I'm going to put a little cash sign in here, $5. Save, refresh. And I'm going to do another input group. And this is going to be another H2, another div called total bill. And call it total bill. And we're just going to just fake it with $15. Answering Karen's question on Slack. So do you want me to leave those radio buttons stacked or put them side by side? For right now, let's just keep them stacked. But eventually, I don't know, when we're completely done, we might abandon the radio buttons and make them real regular buttons. But for tonight, for this video, I actually wanted to show you radio buttons. So right now, radio buttons are going to be stacked, but we could apply input row and make display flex and make those little items display side by side. We could do that. But for right now, I want to focus on just building this out, stylizing a few more things, and then get right into the nitty-gritty with JavaScript. Nitty-gritty, now look at these H2s. These H2s have a little cash sign and a big dollar amount. But you know what? I already have an element called prefix that has styling to it. I'm going to put element prefix inside here. I'm going to just clean this up a little bit. Watch what happens when I hit save and refresh. It brings those gray little cash signs in there. Beautiful. Well, then what about the dollar amount? The dollar amount is also going to be its own span called, oh, what do I want to call this? Total tip. Terrible. I should get this in here. Let's see what happens with total tip. Boom. And the total amount of the tip is just going to be some raw number. I'm separating those two because once we do JavaScript, JavaScript isn't going to touch the cash sign. It's just going to touch the number inside this span element and put in a brand new number, and this is going to be called total bill. JavaScript, when we start crunching some math and we get the input from above, and when it comes time to output, we're going to have JavaScript select this total tip and this total bill and put in the brand new amount. Save, refresh, doesn't look like anything fancy. We got to stylize these H2s. We got to stylize these H2s. Hey, H2, font family, primary font. Font size, I don't know, 1.5 rem. Color black, it already is. It's redundant. Font weight bold. Save, refresh, boom. So total tip, total bill, and the is just a raw number. And hopefully a larger number beyond that. Questions so far? One of you might be wondering, well, how do I get rid of the last little border? I don't want a border on my last group. I want that border to be gone so it goes right into the background color. You can do that in CSS by saying, hey, input group right here. Hey, input group, yes, your border dash bottom. Yes, your padding top and padding bottom. Yes, 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 yes. Ampersand, colon, last hyphen child. Border 0. Just border 0 on the last child. Save, refresh. Pew! It turns off the border on the last child. Look at this ampersand. I showed you that earlier in the earlier video. That means take input group colon last child. It's a pseudo class selector, and it will select the last child and strip it of its border. It's a nice thing to do, last child. There's also first child. I showed you nth of type, or doing the 3n plus 1, 3n plus 4, all that stuff. There's all sorts of little pseudo selectors, pseudo class selectors that are really fun to work with. Questions? Anything slacky? Slacky. Any clarifications on HTML and CSS? Going once, going twice. Are we ready for JavaScript? Give me a thumbs up if you're ready for JavaScript. Thumbs up in Slack, please. JavaScript. It's time to get Java. Java. It's time to get Java. I will stop singing. You're welcome to steal that song that I just made up about JavaScript. I'll release all copyrights, And it's all license free. You can run with it. You can do it. You can publish it. Become a famous star like Justin Bieber or Miley Cyrus or something. They're not famous. Not famous anymore. Thumbs up. Oh, Zach here getting carried away with all sorts of thumbs and fingers. And Kelly, that's the stupidest meme ever. Kelly, back in the penalty box. 2 minutes. Okay, JavaScript. How do we use JavaScript? Well, first of all, you need to, the best way to handle JavaScript is to store it in an external file. There are some cases where you might put it inline in your HTML document, but most of the time it's nice to link to a script. Not just a script like that, but a script, if you type out and go down to source and hit tab. Oh, I missed a tab. Script, source, tab, and go into the JS folder and grab a file called main.js. You can call that JS file anything you want to, as long as you link to it correctly. Now notice I'm at the very end of my HTML document. This is usually a good place to put your JavaScript because it allows the browser to read this entire document, the HTML document, from top to bottom. It loads in all of its elements, H1, H2, H3, body, header, all that fun stuff. It loads in the style sheets as well. It loads in everything. And then by the time it gets down to this bottom, by the time it gets to the bottom of this document, and it loads in this main.js file, it has a good chance of actually knowing what the form is. Like in this main.js file, I'm going to reference the calculator form. Well, if I have this whole script thing at the very top of my document, this form ID calculator might not have been loaded into the browser just yet. And when this file fires off too soon, and you can get some error messages. It's not going to work correctly. By putting it at the bottom, you're almost guaranteeing that it's going to be ready to be used at the right time. Save. I'm going to go into the terminal, pwd. Ooh, I'm in the regions file, cd .. That brings me up to css .. one more time. That brings me up to my root folder, the calculator folder. I'm going to cd, go into JS, and touch and make a file called main.js. I'm going to open up that file, main.js. And the first thing I always do is a console.log and say loaded. As in, is this working? Is this thing working? Save, refresh. When you refresh the browser, you can't really tell, but you got to right click, inspect element, and go to not your elements, but your console. And you should see this. You should see loaded coming from main.js line number 1. If you get this message, you now know that, first of all, you coded the console log correctly, and then most importantly, you know that your script source is linking correctly. Never, never, never go beyond this unless you get a quick test done. It's the same exact principle from changing your body background color to yellow. It tells you, okay, things are linking correctly, and even your Sass files are working correctly. In this case, my JavaScript is correctly. And Kelly's coming out of the penalty box. A lot of penalties today, Kelly. A lot of penalties. You got to clean up your act a little bit. Okay. Going back to JavaScript a little bit and going to this last page that I gave you. This is kind of like a little code flow we're going to focus on. We're going to have code that listens for form changes. We're going to collect some input from the total bill, the tip amount, or the tip percentage. Then we're going to do some math. And then we're going to output the total tip and output the total bill after that. And just by telling that to myself, I like to make a table of contents in my JavaScript file. Number 1, like a little slash size, a little invisible note. Number 1, listen for form changes. Number 2, collect inputs. Number 3, do some math. Number 4, output values, something like that. I kind of just scaffold out a quick little table of contents in my JavaScript file. // means invisible notes. Hey, browser, please skip over this code. Don't use it. So listen for form changes. The first thing we got to do is get the form itself. We're going to make a constant variable called form. Const, that means variable. It's a variable that's not going to really change. It's going to hold something, and really, I want it to hold everything about this form, this calculator form from my DOM, from my HTML document, if you will. So, hey, browser, hey, document, I want you to get. Now, I type out the word get, and all these suggestions appear off to the right. I want to get an element by ID. I really want that calculator ID. Const form equals document, which is your DOM. It has all sorts of methods inside it, things, little action items. Hey, document, I want you to, I'm attaching a method called getElement by ID. I literally want you to go into yourself and get an element by ID by the name of calculator. Now, where's that? Where am I getting that from? Well, go back to the index file, find the form, action equals blank, ID equals calculator. So it's getting that ID. Notice I didn't put hashtag calculator. It already knows it's looking for an ID, so you just got to specify the name of the ID. I make that mistake 1,000 times. Okay, so your methods often know what they're looking for, whether period, pound sign, or element, etc. Let's prove that it actually picked it up and put it into the const form by console logging the form variable. Console log form. Save, refresh, and first of all I get loaded, and then form grabs everything and just dumps it into the console log for you, which is kind of nice. Any problems with that so far? Not too bad. I'll leave the screen up for just a little bit. Now, I often don't just type this from scratch. Okay, this little get element by ID is camel cased. Oh man, you can easily make typos in there. So try to utilize that drop down that VS Code gives you. And after a while, after you do it 10, 20, 30 times, these methods like get element by ID, get element by class name, yada yada yada, they become second nature. They become baked into your repertoire. Okay, so what about the form? What are we going to do? We want to listen for changes a little bit. But I'm going to make a sub-item, and I'm going to make a little 1A here. Sub-item, I want to prevent default behavior of this form. Okay, we're not technically posting anything on this form. We're not sending it into the database. Like, watch what happens when I type something in and I hit return. It reloads the entire page. And it gets rid of everything. It's like it's trying to go to the next page of this sequence. And I don't want anyone to reload the page when they hit enter. So, hey form, I want to add event listener. Look at this first suggestion right there. Form dot, and I want to attach add event listener method, parentheses, semicolon. I want to attach an event listener. I want to wait for something to happen with that form. And two things go in here. Now, don't type this, but the event that caused it and what's called the callback function goes inside it. But you don't type it out event comma callback. You type it out like this. You type out when the submit event happens, basically when you hit enter, something happens. A function happens. Every function has its own set of parentheses and its own set of curly braces. Notice I'm still in the parentheses of the method called add event listener. So let me just type this from scratch one more time. Hey form, I want to add, look at that first suggestion is add event listener. Parentheses, semicolon. Parentheses, semicolon. Boom. I stare at that for 2 seconds. Did I type that correctly? Yes, thank you, VS Code. What's the event that I want to trigger this, all this stuff that I'm about to talk about? Well, it's going to be the submit event. submit in quotes, comma, what happens in response to the submit? Well, a function gets invoked. An anonymous function gets invoked. Function spelled out correctly, don't make any typos. Every function needs its own set of parentheses and its own set of curly braces. I'm going to bring the closing curly brace down and label this submit end. Because that little curly brace, parentheses, semicolon, often you lose track of it, what it's actually closing. So it's almost like a slash div. You got to give a little label so you can keep track. All right, well, what's going to happen when someone submits? Well, in the parentheses of this function, I'm going to capture the entire event, what just happened with it, and I'm going to store it in a variable called event, a local variable inside this space. This word event is going to be used right here. I want JavaScript to take that event and attach the method called prevent default, parenthesis, oh my god, I can't type, event dot prevent default, parenthesis, semicolon. This method is really a function that's built into the framework of JavaScript, and when called upon, it basically just blocks the form, in this case, from being used in its default manner. The form wants to be processed. When you hit enter, it wants to go somewhere. It wants to send information somewhere. And we're saying, when we submit, this function gets fired off. When this function gets invoked, it's capturing all the event information in a variable called, coincidentally, event. And we're saying, hey, variable event, I want to block you. I want to stop you from doing something now. Does it have to be called event? No. You could literally call this bananas and say, hey, bananas, hey, event, I want it to prevent your default behavior. But typically, developers will put the word event, or you'll just see the letter E, and then you'll see e.prevent default. It's really the entire event. I like to spell it out because it reminds me what it is. I hate seeing one-letter acronyms or one-letter abbreviations in code. Because, yeah, today you know what it is, but then next week, 1 month from now, 1 year from now, when you look at this code, you're not going to know what E stands for. Now, when I type out 1, 2, 3, 4 into the how much was your bill and I hit return, return, nothing happens. It's not reloading. It's not refreshing. It's being paused. It's waiting for me to supply some code. Okay, so that was 1A. 1B is going to be really listen for form changes, because we're going to live update our tip calculator. As you type in 1, 2, 3, 4 and choose a percentage, we're going to live update total tip and live update bill. We're not going to wait for someone to hit enter or submit. Notice there's no submit button. We're going to live update and do the math on the fly. So that's listening for form changes. That's, hey form, I want to add event listener. What's the event and what's going to happen in return in response to the event? And the event is simply called change. When that form changes, when I type in something into the child input, or I choose a new input, when I choose a new radio input, that's a change. And what happens? Well, a function gets fired off, invoked, that is. Every function needs its own parentheses. Every function needs its own curly braces. I'm going to bring that closing curly brace down, and I'm going to type out change end. Well, what's going to happen? Before I get into the nitty gritty, I'm going to log in and say form changed. Just a quick test. Did the form actually change if I do actually change values or something? Save, refresh. Okay, I'll show you the code in 1 second. But if I type out, if I hit reload, if I type out 1, 2, 3 and hit and go down to radio button, boom, form change. New radio button, form change a third time. 20% form change a fourth time. If I go back up here and type in 20 and hit return, form change a fifth time. Okay, so it is listening. It's like, woo, the form, something about the form has changed. Some state has been changed, I guess, about the form. But really, it's listening to its children components, its children inputs. And it's getting excited that things are changing. Any questions so far? All right, my step 2, my big step 2 is collect data inputs. I'm gonna move step 2 inside the change event. We're gonna stay inside here. Everything that we're gonna do right now is gonna be in response to the form changing. Every time that form changes, we gotta collect some new inputs. We gotta know what's the bill and what's the percentage. And then once we know those two things, we can get into step 3 and step 4. We're going to do a little math, and we're going to output the values. But we're going to stay exclusively in the local scope of this change function. When I say local scope, I am tabbed in. I am inside this whole function that responds to the change. And it's all inside add event listener method for this form. Think of it as I'm inside a div class container. And all these statements are going to go inside here, and here's my /div for container. I want all my children pieces inside. All right, so I'm going to make a const, a variable that's going to hold my bill amount. I'm making up a constant variable here. Bill amount. Well, what's bill amount going to be? Sorry, no, I'm going to change that. I'm going to call it bill input. This is going to hold my input field that we're typing in the bill amount in first position. Const bill input, notice the camel casing, capital I. Hey bill input, well, hey JavaScript, I want you to go get an element by ID and put all that stuff into that constant bill, that variable called bill input. Now what ID do I want to go get? I don't know. What's my bill called? My input field in HTML. Input type equals number, name equals bill. Ooh, now, yeah, I could actually select it by the name called bill and the name equals tip. I could do that. Let me go back. Document dot get, and look at the drop down up or pop up, if you will. Get animations. No, get element by ID, get element by class name, get element by name. Yeah, this gets a collection of objects based on the value of the name. If we go up to ID. Okay, I am going to favor using an ID over get elements by name. You'll see me use the name in 1 second. ID is a little easier right now at this stage of your JavaScript knowledge. So I don't have an ID on that input field, so I'm going to go back to my bill and lay down ID equals bill. If I clean this up a little bit, yeah, I have type, yes, I have name equals bill, but now I do have ID bill. They're two different things, even though it seems very similar. Okay, ID equals bill. Ooh, if I come back to JavaScript land, I can say, in quotes, just give me the damn bill. Perfect. Console log, let's just see what it's holding. Hey, bill input. Console log, bill input. It's going to literally give me, it's going to give me a literal thing about this. Okay, boom, it's literally outputting input type number, bill, all that fun stuff. But there's a little subproperty of bill that you're not aware of. And it's the value of this input field. And to get the value of your input field, let me zoom in. I'm just going to quickly console log bill input dot value. Like, don't give me everything about the bill input field. Give me just the value of it. Save, refresh. And if I type in 20 and I hit return, look at it, I get form changed and I get 20 spitting out. With that, you could now start to do things with it. Now we're not ready to do something with it. Here's something hidden though that I was experiencing when I was practicing this. I type out 20. I was experimenting, don't do this, but I was like, oh, give me bill input times 40. Bill input times 40. Save. Refresh. I'm going to do 20 and hit return. And oh, it does work actually. Take that back. It gave me 800. I was expecting it to not be the right, what's it called? Not the right data type. Sometimes when you grab things from values, from input fields, they all come in as strings. And in order to do math here, you really need integers. And the value here is an integer. I take that back. I was expecting a string. Never mind, keep moving. Also, I'm going to save some space. I don't need to have just const bill input and then the bill. I could just combine these two lines and say bill input value is document get element by ID bill dot value at the end. Let's see what happens. Let's see if I can save two lines. Because I was about to make a variable. I was about to make a new variable just to hold the value from that bill input. And it's like overkill. What I was about to do was this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. But I was about to make a new bill input dot value equals bill input dot value. Okay, and that's just another line of code. I don't need to do anything else with the bill input, so I'm going to merge the value and just tag on. Look at, hey, document get element by ID bill, grab the bill, but then grab the value of it and put it in there. Almost the same thing for the tip, but the tips are coming from radio buttons. And there's 3 radio buttons with the same damn name. Okay, there's 3 radio buttons with name equals tip, but they have different values inside them. So how do we get that? Well, we're going to make a const called tip radios equals, hey, document, I need you to get document.get elements by name. And what this is going to return is an array of whatever matches this. What's the name? Well, the name is the tip. And I'll show you exactly what I'm connecting that to. Get elements by name. Input is the element name, but ignore that. You're getting name equals tip. All 3 of these lines are going to be returned in this little get request. Get elements by name. What name attribute are you looking for? I'm looking for the tip name attribute. We'll then put them all into tip radios, and we'll do a console log right after this and see what is it actually holding. Console.log tip radios. Save. And then I'm going to type in 20, enter, and without even doing anything with the radios, I can see what's called a node list being returned. Form change, here's my total bill, or sorry, my initial bill, and then node list, that's my radios. If I open that up, look at 0, 1, 2. 0 is an input, 1 is an input, 2 is an input. These are index numbers, 0, 1, 2. If I open up 0, oh my God, all these little sub-properties about that first input. It is an input element, and it has all sorts of little properties built into it that you can't even see. A class name blank, client height, client left, client top. These are like browser left, browser top, browser width, etc. It has an ID of nothing. It has inner text of nothing. The one thing I'm looking for is checked. Checked. Is this radio button checked? No. False. Is the second input, index 1, checked? False. And is input 2 checked? False. Okay. Well, I want to have one, if I hit refresh and I go to interact with this, if I don't have any of these checked right now, it's going to give me false tips and false bills. It's going to break the code. So even without choosing a tip, I want to have a pre-selected tip. And you can do that with HTML very easily by adding the checked value to your input field. Let me zoom in here so you can see this in action. I'm taking the 15% because I would like to see people tip at 15% without manually choosing 10% or 20%. Like this is just a general defense. Now you would think you would have to do checked equals true, But you can actually get away with just doing this. If this attribute is here, it's automatically assumed to be true. Save, refresh, boom, 15% without me even interacting with this browser. It's automatically 15%. If I choose 10%, 20%, every time my form changes, look at it, it's adding more console logs. Let me just refresh and type into 20. Boom. Yes, I get form change. 20 is my bill, but if I open this up and I go to my first input, checked, what are you? You are false. Second input, index 1, checked, true. Ooh, we're good, okay. And then input 3, checked, is false. Knowing that, and knowing that get elements by name returns an array of matched objects, you need to what's called loop through these and grab the tip yourself. You're going to see how this works in 1 second. So first of all, I'm going to make a I am going to make a new variable, like a loose variable called tip. And I'm just going to initialize it as 0 for right now. Now, what's the difference between const and let? Well, const, they never change. They're like permanent now. Like it's holding radios and it's only going to hold radios. I can't change, I can't mutate this const tip radios to hold anything else. It's kind of been locked. Like the parking brake is applied to tip radios. But when you have let, this means tip can change. It can go from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. It can do anything it wants to. It can mutate at any time. So this is immutable const, and this is mutable, if you will, fancy word for being able to be changed. But after I make a little variable, I make a for loop. Ooh, for loop is one of my favorite things in JavaScript. Now we're going to do a long form for loop, but when you get fancy with advanced JavaScript, there's some quicker methods of executing for loops on the fly, namely map, reduce, all that fun stuff, but ignore that. In a for loop, you need to declare 3 things. Don't type this, but these are the 3 things. Well, I'll type it up above here. You need to initialize a count. You need to have a limit. Sorry, a condition, really it's a limit. And then you need an incrementer. You need 3 things in that for loop. You need to initialize a count. You need to have a condition on when to shut this thing off. And you need something to help increment the counter to get it closer and closer to the condition to turn it off. So here comes the count. Let I equals 0. Now, why did I pick I? Well, I'm not using I anywhere else. A lot of developers use I or X or N. It's just a letter. I could call it let bananas equals 0 as long as I type out bananas all these times. And then, well, let's keep this going while something remains true. While I remains less than tip radios dot length. Tip radios is holding 3 children, 3 items in that array, and dot length. Every array has a dot length property attached to it. I'll show you. Hold on. Let's go back. Save. Refresh. Ooh, hold on. I have an unexpected thing. The last little thing I need is I plus plus. But hold on. Let me show you my length. And type in 20. Boom. Look at this node list. It's an array. If I open this up, I see 0, 1, 2, and I see this default property. It's built into every array called length, and it's holding 3 children. It's holding 3 children for this type of scenario. Let I equals 0, I keep going. Loop, keep going while I remains less than tip radios at length, while I remains less than 3. And right now, I is going to start at 0. I'm going to console log in I. Let's see this in action. Console log I. And I'm going to put a little note here, for loop end. You'll see why we're doing this. 1 second. Boom. I'm going to type in 20. Boom. I log in my node list, but then I get 0, 1, 2. It tells me that my loop is working, and it's only working 3 times, and it quits. It quits because I was 0, and it logged in 0. and then it hit I++. It went round again. I became 1. It's still less than 3, so keep going. Log in 1. It became 2. Is 2 less than radio length? Tip radio length? Yes, it's less than 3. Go to 3. And then it, sorry, went 0, 1, 2. It tried to go to 3, and it said, whoa, 3, are you less than 3? No, false. So then stop this whole thing. That's why you don't see console log 3 in there, which is good. Now, why the hell are we doing a for loop? Well, tip radios get elements by name for the tip name. It was returned an array. In order to extract the one that's checked, the one radio button that's checked, we needed to loop through and check to see every child. Hey, first radio button, are you checked? Look at this. If something is true, do something. Hey, what is it? Tip radios, square brackets I, dot checked. Are you true? Oh no, sorry, no quotes. Hey, tip radios I dot checked property. Tip radios I, that means my first input, then my second input, and then my third input. But looking at it one at a time, so tip radio 0. It's my first child. Hey, first child, checked property. Are you true? If you are, well then, hey tip, you are equal to tip radios I dot value. There's the value property inside. That's holding the 0.1, the 0.15, the 0.2 of the radio button, that internal value property. So, hey, tip radio 0, check value, are you true? If you are, if that whole statement resolves to a true value, then, well, tip is going to pick up the internal property called value. If it's false, if this is false, it skips over and it keeps going. It goes to the second, tip radios 1 dot checked. Are you true? If you are, which you are, because I haven't changed anything, yeah, it's going to capture probably 0.15. And if that works, I'm going to console log, in addition to capturing the tip, I'm going to log in the variable tip into the browser. Save, refresh. I'm going to type in 20, hit return. And look what happens. Now look at node list 0, 1. I'm going to even get fancier with a stupid console log and say checked with exclamation points. Look at, if there's a match, if tip radios, if my little radio button is checked, if it's true, then boom, give me a big fat message called checked. And then grab the little tip value and log in the tip value. Save. Refresh. I'm going to type in 20, hit return, and I get index 0, index 1, and then it logs in 0.15, and then it keeps going to 2. This little loop will keep going. It's going to go through all 3 tip radio buttons without stopping until you give it this information. Like once you find the checkbox, stop. If there's a match, if it's true, yeah, shout to me checked. I don't have to shout these things anymore. But once you find the tip, once you find the checkboxed radio button, grab it, grab the value, and then stop. Break means stop this loop. Go all the way back, exit almost. There's other things like continue or end or something, but break means emergency brake, we're done. Get off the train, we're here. Don't look at the third child or first. I mean, if it finds the first child to be good to go, we don't have to do anything. So I'm going to leave the tip actually console logged on so I can make sure that things are flowing. Boom, look at this. So I get 20 for my bill and I get 0.15 for my percentage tip. We just satisfied step 1 and step 2. Listen for form changes. Listen for form changes. Capture data input. Next step, my 2 remaining major steps is to do some math and output those values. Any questions on Slack? Are you following me? Give me a thumbs up if you're still following me. Thumbs up. Anyone? Thumbs up? Thumbs down? Thumbs sideways? Anything? No thumbs? We lost our thumbs. Did we lose thumbs? Okay, Doc here got me 2 fingers. Yes, Kate, here we go. Boom. That's 2 people still with me. Awesome. Karen's good. Awesome. Thank you. Kelly, you're probably in the timeout box. Okay, now time to do some math. We got our tip. We got the total bill. We got the bill input value, that is. We got the tip value. Now, let's get better with my names. Like, the bill input value is perfect. Okay. Tip. What is tip? Is it the percentage? Is it the actual amount that we're doing? No. We should improve this by saying tip percentage equals 0, and then tip percentage is going to capture the value. Okay. Like, let's name our variables a little better than just tip, even though tip, oh nice, 3 letters is perfect, but it doesn't accurately describe what's going inside it. And then my console log is going to hold it tip percentage. Okay, we're done with the for loop, but we're still inside the change method. We're outside the for loop, but we're still inside the change. I'm going to bring up step number 3 here. We're going to do some math. We are going to make a variable called tip amount equals something. Now, okay, I need to take one break, 1 second here. I learned through the hard way, and I wish I could demonstrate the hard way, but I'm not sure if we have time. When you work with money, when you work with any currency, specifically dollars here, what's nice is, yeah, the user might type in dollars, but you also want to quickly convert it to cents. You don't want to add dollars, you don't want to add nickels or quarters or anything like that. You want to work with the lowest, most granular type of unit you can work with. It's like when you work with time. If you ever want to like calculate time, like say I ran 3 miles and it took me 30 minutes. You don't just take 30 minutes divided by 3 and you get 10. You calculate your minutes to seconds. 30 times 60 is 1800 seconds, and then you divide by 3, as in 3 miles, and you get why can't I do the math? 600 seconds. And then you take that seconds, you divide by your units. You divide them into, well, what goes in a minute? Oh, 60 seconds in a minute, and that's where you get 6 minutes a mile, or whatever I'm doing with my math here. 10 minutes a mile, sorry. Same thing in money. You really want to convert your money down to cents. Do all the math with the cents, and then at the very end, convert it back to dollars. So I'm going to make a const underneath my bill. I'm going to call bill cents. And it's my bill input value times 100. Dakir, thank you for saying goodbye. Appreciate it. Maybe check the video later on. Perfect. Bill cents. So it's bill input value times 100. And now when it's time to do the math, we're going to work with cents as much as we can. And then we'll convert it to the actual thing. So actually, I'm going to make this constant called tip cents. It's going to be the tip, but in cents. Well, how do you calculate the tip cents? Well, you take your bill cents and you multiply it by that value of the tip percentage. Remember, it was storing 0.1, 0.15, 0.2. So in a little comment here, it's almost like you're taking 20 times 0.15, 0.15 or whatever. And what does that give you? It gives you 15% of that total bill. Let's log it in. Oops, console.log. Let's log in tip cents. Let's try to use a whole number here so we don't get too crazy. I'm going to use $10 at 15%. Boom. I see 150 cents is what's owed. Don't ignore my total tip and total bill. We haven't outputted anything, but we're just working exclusively in our council log. We got 150 cents. Beautiful. Do some random number, like $11.43 in return. Boom. 15% of that is $171.40. But how about something crazier? I don't know, 11.29, 11.78, $9.99. Okay, now, that's why I was trying to expose this error, and it was just right in front of me, happened the entire time. When I take a random number like $10.45, it gives me 156 cents 0.75. There is no such thing as 75% of a cent. So what do you think you're going to do when you have these cents? When you have decimal points of cents, you can't give back 3/4 of a cent. What you need to do is math.round, round the result of bill cents times tip percentage. Math.round, if I type in $11.45, it gives me the wholest cent, not the dollar, not the nickel, not the quarter. It gives me the nearest cent. So if it's like 75% of a cent, it rounds up. But if it was like 0.4 of a cent, it rounds down. Okay, so yeah, math.round. Now, let's make a const called tip dollars. And take tip cents and divide by 100. And console log in tip dollars. Save, refresh. $11.45, enter, means $1.72. There we go. It's working. Bunch of other console logs. It's a little crazy with all these console logs, but it'd be nice to actually turn off some extra console logs so that we don't get convoluted or all messed up. I love keeping console logs here in the code. Just comment them off because they become checkboxes. Hey, this console log was working at one time. I know that because I commented it out. All these things means check, 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 check. These things were working. So if things stop working, it's probably down near where I was just doing some work. So if I do stuff, boom, $1.72. If I get a crazy number, I don't know, just make sure I'm testing this out. Yeah, it's working. Now look at this. What happens when I do 65.345678910, whatever, big decimal, enter. Okay, you do not want a user to type in more than, hundredths. You don't want thousandths in whatever comes after that. There's actually an attribute for an input field. Look at this. Input, type number, name bill, ID. Here comes step equals 0.01. Step. I don't know what the word step means in this case, but it means do not let this step past a tenth, except a value that has a decimal point of hundredths. Save, refresh, watch what happens. If I go 43.444444, oh, it does allow me to type, but I thought there was a limiter. What's my limiter? Oh, did I hit reload? Did I hit save? Refresh, 44.55555. Well, it's giving me suggestions. Okay, I'm going to open up a new tab and input number only hundredths or something. Can't spell hundredths, by the way. No. Input number step. Input step attribute. Step 3. Legal numbers. Let me look at my code I did for something else. Boom, 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 boom. Stand by. Step 01. Yeah. Step 0.01. What did I not do? Step 0.01. Also, I'm going to put a placeholder in here. Placeholder equals 0.00. Let's see what happens with that. .44. Why aren't you locking in? At least it gives me the warning message, but I have to look that up. I don't know. It was working for me earlier. It stopped working. I don't know. Anyways, things are working. It is outputting the number. We are capturing the values correctly. We did the math. We need to also capture the total bill. Okay, so const total bill equals what? Let's do total bill cents. Equals what? It's bill cents plus tip cents. Console log total bill cents. 50.31. Boom. And my total bill at 15% of $50.31 is 5,786 cents. The last thing we have to do is const bill dollars equals what? Total bill cents divided by 100 in console log bill dollars. So $10, boom, I get total bill $11.5. Okay, so we got the right numbers. We did some math. Step 4 in all this is output those values. To output the values, almost done here, people. We're going to, first of all, const select tip output. Just naming it tip output because it's going to be the document grabbing an ID of my output. My tip output is going to go where this $5 is. Span class equals total tip. Oh, you know what? I should let's just use an ID. Instead of class total tip, I meant to say ID total tip and ID total bill. Because it's very easy to then say, hey, document, get element by ID and get total tip ID. Make sure this is right. Total tip and total bill. Yeah, let's get another const called bill output. Document get element by ID and total bill ID right there. Perfect. All right. Well, how do we do this? Here's a new little trick, not trick, but new little code that's brand new to you almost. Hey, tip output. What about you? I want to put the tip inside you. You know, I selected the element. Basically, I selected the span element called total ID total tip. I want to control what goes inside you, and that's called dot inner text. your inner text is set to tip dollars. And bill output, your inner text, your interior text, if you will, your inside bits, are bill dollars. Save, refresh, 10, boom. If I type in 20, boom. 25, boom. It's updating, it's updating, it's updating. All because I'm still inside the change method, by the way. Notice that, see that slash change? That's the end of the change method. That's when the form, all this stuff is happening in response to the change of the form. Let's take a breather right there. Let's digest. What is happening here? I'll come right back, but I'm going to go up to step 1. We're listening for a form change. We've collected our inputs. We converted to bill cents. We clicked the tip radios. We looped through the tip radios and grabbed the one that was checkboxed and grabbed the value and stored it inside a variable called tip percentage. We did some math. We made tip cents and tip dollars. Try to stay in cents as long as possible. And we made our total bill in cents, and then we converted it to dollars. And the last thing is, after we did the math, select our output destinations and fill the inside text with those new amounts. Now, one thing that you're looking at probably is when I type out 10 and I hit return, I see total tip 1.5, total bill 11.5. That's not really currency friendly or user friendly in terms of money. When we see 50 cents or anything like that, we always expect it to have 2 decimal points. And that, I believe, is called .to fixed method that gets applied to those numbers. To fixed and a numerical value. And what that means is you are expecting it to always have 2 places past the decimal point. Save, refresh. If I type in 10 and I hit return, I get 150 and 1150. It's always going to output that number, tip dollars, fixed to 2 positions past the decimal point, even if it's .00 or .1 or .2. It's always going beyond that. Now watch what happens when I get silly. I'm going to make it go to fixed 5. And if I type in 5, boom, I get some crazy number to 5 positions, fixed positions past that little decimal point. So 2 fixed makes it usable. Cool. Who's still with me? Who's still with me? Give me some thumbs up, thumbs down, some Q&As, some questions, about why or what the hell did I just do with all of this stuff. However, as you ask me, go ahead and post questions if you do on Slack, but in the meantime, I love these projects. I absolutely love doing simple examples. And when I say simple, okay, not quite simple. There's a lot to unpack here, but really is a simple, straightforward, real example. Keyword, real. You can understand this. There's context. You go out to eat. We've all been out to eat. We get that receipt. Oh, and then you're like, oh my God, how much do I tip? I can't do the math in my head. Often what I do is take the tax rate around here. The tax rate is like 7 or 8% in the county, the sales tax that is, and I double it, and that gives me 16%. And I take that value and I just put it in the tip. But if you wanted to have a little app or a little website called Tip Calculator, you can do all this. This is how you learn JavaScript. And this is how you really learn any programming language. Force yourself to do a real problem. Don't get fake. Don't do some silly thing where you just change numbers. Another perfect example would be Fahrenheit to Celsius. You have a value. How do you convert it to Celsius? I don't know. There's a little algorithm, a little mathematical formula to do that. Another one would be, pounds to ounces, cooking measurements, kilometers to miles, little conversions. If you want to get fancier, you can always do like a mortgage calculator. Like, how much is the price of the house? How many years do you want the mortgage to be? Boom, you run it through a little mathematical formula and spit out the total amount, or divide by 30, and that's how much you pay a year, etc. So question on Slack, inspect element says, bill input value is not defined. So we bill input value. All right, so this line right here, bill input value, document.getElementById called bill. Now you got to ask yourself, do I actually have ID bill in my DOM, in my HTML? I'm going to travel back to HTML and find the initial bill. And that was this first input field. How much was your bill? Prefix cash sign, but input type number, name bill, ID bill. That's the most important thing, ID bill. And step was supposed to be like how many decimal points can we force in there. It's not working for whatever reason. And placeholder was just what do you see in the input field before you click into it. But more importantly, right here, that's probably the mistake. The ID doesn't exist. Anyone else have some questions? Thumbs up, thumbs down. How are we feeling? Feel like you're getting your feet wet in JavaScript? I would encourage everyone to mess around with this. I'm going to push this up to GitHub. You're welcome to download it yourself, but mess it around. I would challenge you. Well, first of all, let's just get this working, period. But if you're up for a challenge, how can you make this calculator better, this tip calculator? Let's think about real world examples when you're out to a restaurant and you want to calculate. Often, like if you're just going out with your significant other or a friend, say you just pretend it's me and my wife. My wife handles all the bills. Okay, so she gets the bill. She whips out her tip calculator app on her phone. She puts in the bill amount. She puts in a percentage. Boom. Now, like what I always like to do is I like to round up or round down. And I always hate having like $38.42 being extracted out of my bank account, which it doesn't really bother me, but I like whole numbers. I like to round up. It's like a little thing of like, oh, that was a really good service. He or she not only gets 15%, but they get the little round up, little extra penny. So a scenario would be, how do you take your total bill and round up or round down? Another feature that you could add to this, if you're out with a party of people and you're the person who collects the bill and you have to collect everyone's money, the question is, okay, you have 4 people in your party and we all want to pay equal tip. How do you do that? Okay, so you got to take your the 15% of the total tip and then divide by the number of people. You got to have an input field for the number of people. You got to take that number. You got to put it in here. Boom, boom, boom. There's more pieces that you could add to this. So round up, round down, number of people, and yeah. Also, I've heard people say this all the time, and I don't do it myself, but I probably should. Technical people are very OCD about bill amounts. You're supposed to not tip on the total amount of the bill. So when you get that receipt from a restaurant, it includes your bill and tax. So really, you should look at the subtotal and tip on your subtotal. You should be tipping 15% on your subtotal, not 15% of the total bill. So to improve this tip calculator, maybe you put in the subtotal first, and then tax, and then tip, so that you get the grand total at the end to put at the very bottom of your receipt. So these are things that you should be thinking about. Like, do the base level, do your baseline copy of this tip calculator, and then challenge yourself, make it better by a couple steps. And then, ooh, man, that's the secret sauce. That's where you're really taking control of your code and you're understanding how things are built. If you have any questions, any questions on Slack, Karen, that's a lot. And I'll be rewatching this video a few times. Awesome. You can skip through a little bit. Like I said, I'll push this code up onto GitHub, and also I'll post a zip on the Slack channel as backup. But if you have any questions, please ask me in Slack. If not, have a beautiful evening. Good night.